Hello and welcome back to the workshop. This is my MN Models MN45. The upgrade video for this was astonishingly popular, and that popularity proved to be justified in the following video because this thing is an absolute mountain goat now. And that's surprising because apart from electronics, all I did to this was take out the puny 130 motor and fit a 180, the biggest the gearbox would take, move the battery forwards and down, and swap the wheels for WPL wheels, which being smaller give a lower final drive ratio and which have a much more scale appearance. Ever since then, this little truck has given me hours and hours of happy runtime until very recently when I was driving up a steepish hill and it went vroom. Yep, closer inspection revealed that the gearbox casing itself had ruptured. So, I ordered a new gearbox. I wonder if I can remember how to get the body off. This shot reveals how come I was able to be so sure of my diagnosis without having even removed the body. Yeah, I've had trouble with this gearbox before. It doesn't like the torque from the big 180. However, a new gearbox has arrived. This is what came in the packet, though I did also separately order this 180 sized crawler motor. Well, the motor's a perfect fit in the gearbox and the pinion's compatible. What's more, the gearbox went straight in. I thought I'd have to make mounts, but no, it's completely compatible and went straight in. However, the gearbox is supplied with two half prop shafts, the idea being presumably that you shouldn't have to struggle to force them on and off their tight press fit on the shaft. However, unfortunately for me, both halves are the same here. There's nothing I can do with these, they're incompatible. Yeah, that was frustrating, but luckily I had the old prop shafts, so what I did was pick them apart at the UJ and put a male bit on each axle going into the female bits coming out of the gearbox. So in the end the whole thing was resolved. Let's see how it goes. the rear prop has come adrift and wasn't being driven. Back to the studio. As you can see, the prop shafts are retained by this screw. Well, on this side you can see clearly that the prop shaft has failed. That diagonal crack caused the screw to become completely ineffective. As this splayed, the threads ceased to grip the screw, and so that was that horrible noise we were hearing. That's good. It looks as though I just need a new rear prop shaft. Upon further inspection, once I got home, it turned out that the front prop shaft had also failed in exactly the same way. It just hadn't fallen apart yet. So here's a pair of cheap AliExpress 55 to 70mm prop shafts, and that means that the weakest point is now going to be the axles. Did you hear that nasty sound then? That was not a sound I wanted to hear. I'm going to reverse back down this hill and try at a more oblique angle. I'm not sure my rear wheels are being driven, you know. The back wheels aren't going round. In theory this doesn't matter because the new back axle has arrived. But in practice things are very different. These mounting points for this bridge are in a different position and the whole axle is shorter. How that was sold as being suitable for the MN45 I don't know. I'm just going to hope that I'll be able to take certain internal components from the new axle and use them to rebuild the old, though the difference in length has left me not too sanguine about that probability. Okay, I know this image is a little confusing, but that is the casing of the original axle. That's its shaft, which is longer. This is all the later axle, which I now realise is for a WPLB1, that's why it's shorter. So I've taken the metal gears from the narrower axle and I've modified this shaft by grinding it. Do you see that flat? That's to take the grub screw which secures the metal parts. So I'm going to have, hopefully if this all works, these bits in this axle. It's all back together with the metal gears from the WPLB1. Let's just see if it works. I don't know if you can see it, but I can see that the differential input shaft is indeed turning. For some reason, these gears taken from a WPLB1 axle simply don't mesh together when installed in this MN model's axle housing. I decided to try adding a shim which would push the differential input gear slightly more firmly against the crown wheel. This is the upshot. Jams there and going the other way. Jams there. Just out of curiosity, I plan to put all the metal gears back into the other axle casing, the one that doesn't fit, and then look into bending my suspension links to make it fit. I'm almost certain that that would be impossible because they would end up being too short or too long. During what now feels like a previous life, I studied economics, and it was then that I learned about something called the sunk cost fallacy. This is when you've poured so much money into an activity or project that you think it would be crazy to stop now, and you keep going. I've kind of reached that point with this. After all, I set out to show that you can build a reasonable trail truck without spending too much money, and instead, in this video alone, I've bought a motor, a gearbox, a pair of drive shafts, and I've just destroyed a back axle. So, is it still cost effective to fix this thing? Well, all it currently needs is a back axle, so you would have thought yes. However, looking online, I see that a pair of metal axles are £35, and if I spend just a little more, I can come up with a much better solution. And why do I say that? Well, simply because for only £47 I was able to buy this. It's a brand new MN45 V2. Now think about it. If I just unbolt this body, 6 little screws, and bolt on my body, what do I get? Axles with metal internals, an axle mounted front servo which gets rid of bump steer, a jump up from a 180 motor to a 280, and MN's excellent beadlock wheels. So that's what we're doing, right? Well, that certainly was the plan. In fact, it's why I bought the MN99S. I even got as far as taking the body off the FJ45. But it didn't feel right. It felt like copping out. I sat there with the chassis in my hand. I looked down at it and thought, no, I can fix you, and I will. So the yellow Land Rover's safe for now, because I've ordered this thing a new back axle. The new metal geared back axle has arrived. Let's hope that the main shaft is straighter than the one in the last axle. You will notice that there's no lubrication whatsoever on these gears. I'll rectify that, then put it back together and get it bolted onto the truck. I feel a duty to mention this. It's just a minor irritation in the grand scheme of things, but still. I couldn't buy an axle from MN Models with steel gears, so I bought an aftermarket one, and I knew that the aftermarket axle I bought would not fit into here. That's 3mm and they're usually about 3.2mm. So I have a 3.2mm drill bit. I drilled it out. It still didn't fit. The next size up I had was 4mm. That meant that a standard grub screw wasn't long enough and I had to improvise. But still, that irritation aside, at least the thing is finally mended. Let's test it. Well, I'm the first to confess that I was half expecting disaster throughout that little test, but I think I can cautiously say that it seems to really be mended. In which case, perhaps one day soon I'll get a chance to do what I'd love to do, which is shoot a video in which I compare this directly to the MN40, the MN99S and the MN168. Until I do manage to organise that though, at least I know that this one's up and running. Meanwhile, thanks very much for watching.